On the morning of June 31, 1971, the sound of a helicopter echoed across the vast and desolate plains of Kazakhstan. The Soyuz 11 spacecraft of the Soviet Union had landed on Earth. Light dust was swirling all around, and the rays of the sun were falling on that small capsule, which had just returned from the infinite depths of space a short while ago. There was an atmosphere of excitement all around. There was a glow of hope on the faces of the recovery team members. This was the moment that Soviet scientists, engineers, and the entire country had been eagerly waiting for. The Soyuz 11 mission was the world's first mission that gave humans the opportunity to stay on a space station for an extended period. The recovery teams quickly moved toward the spacecraft, which had just returned from space a short while ago. But as soon as the team opened the heavy metal hatch of the space capsule, that excitement instantly turned into panic. The scene before them made everyone's hair stand on end. A terrifying sight appeared before everyone, which shook not only those present there that day to their core, but it also became a dark chapter in the history of space. As soon as it opened, the three astronauts, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev, were found lying in their seats. But this was no ordinary sight. Drops of blood were oozing from their eyes as if some terrible pressure had ruptured their veins. Blue and black patches had appeared on their faces, and thin streams of blood were flowing from their nose and ears, which had clotted on their uniform. Their eyes were open. It seemed as if they had witnessed something terrifying, and what could be more frightening than seeing your own death right in front of you. But there was no movement in them. Dobrovol's was in such a position as if he still wanted to say something, but his breath had already stopped. Volkov's head was tilted to one side, and Patsayev's hand was still reaching toward that valve, which he was probably trying to close until his last breath. The hands of the recovery team members were trembling. Some tried to scream, but their throats were choked from within. The people who had come to see him alive and smiling were now faced with a reality they had never even imagined. The team's doctors immediately tried to check their pulses, but within seconds it became clear that all three were no longer in this world. This was the first and so far the only such incident in space where astronauts lost their lives in the cold and silent depths of space had occurred. Soyuz 11, which was about to become a historic victory for the Soviet Union, turned into a tragedy that shook the entire world. These three astronauts had stayed in space for 23 days while working on the world's first space station, Salyut 1. Preparations for celebrations were underway throughout the Soviet Union for their return, but now that celebration had turned into deep mourning. What exactly happened that this mission, which was about to make history, ended up leaving a stain on history itself? This accident raised many questions. Where exactly did things go wrong? Was this mission in danger from the very beginning? And the biggest question, could the tragedy have been prevented? Today, we will examine this story from every angle and try to find out exactly where the mistake was. From the start of that mission to its tragic end, let's begin this terrifying story at the very beginning.
Let's start from the beginning. I'm above Yarlock and feeling great.
I'm feeling great. The story of Soyuz 11 begins on June 6, in 1971, when this spacecraft was launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the Soviet Union, the space race was at its peak. America had taken its first step on the moon in 1969 through Apollo 11, and that iconic Neil Armstrong line, "A small step for a man, but a giant leap for mankind," was echoing throughout the world. The Soviet Union did not want to forget this defeat, and it had an answer to it. Salyut 1, the world's first space station. It was a dream that could make it possible for humans to live in space for a long time. Salyut 1 was launched on April 19, 1971. But the first mission sent for this, Soyuz 10, failed to dock with it. Due to a technical malfunction, the crew couldn't even enter the station. All hopes were pinned on Soyuz 11. 3 astronauts were selected for this mission. Georgy Dobrovolsky was a 43-year-old experienced Air Force pilot and also the commander of this mission. He was a calm and serious person. He loved his family very much and often wrote letters to his wife and 2 daughters. Vladislav Volkov was a 35-year-old energetic and experienced astronaut who had already been on Soyuz 7 in 1969. He was known for his humorous and friendly nature. And Viktor Partsev, a 38-year-old talented engineer for whom this was the first space mission. He was passionate about scientific experiments and the idea of seeing Earth from space. Used to dream about it, but these 3 were never part of the main team. The original team meant for the Soyuz 11 mission. That was Alexei Leonov, the astronaut who performed the first spacewalk. Valery Bukasub and Peyo Trekolodin, but just 4 days before the launch, a small spot was found in Kobasub's lungs. The doctors thought it could be tuberculosis. Due to the strict Soviet rules, the entire team was replaced and the backup crew got the chance to do this mission. But later it turned out that Kobasub didn't have tuberculosis, it was just a minor allergy. Leonov said after the incident, "I still think that if we had gone, maybe this accident wouldn't have happened." On the day of the launch, Soyuz 11, with a loud roaring sound, moved towards space. The next day, on June 7, it successfully docked with Salyut 1. This was a historic moment. For the first time, humans were about to live on a space station in space. For the next 22 days, these 3 conducted many experiments there. They studied the sun and the stars. They observed the effects of zero gravity on plants and also recorded the effects of space on their own bodies. Their live broadcasts were continuously shown on Soviet television. On June 19, Pachayev celebrated his birthday in space. He ate cake from a small tube and had fun with his companions. But amidst these happy moments, there were also some troubles. A small fire had broken out at the station, causing smoke to spread throughout the station. The crew managed to control it, but the air quality on the space station had deteriorated. Mission Control decided that it was time to return now. On June 29, they separated from Salyut 1. They packed their belongings into Soyuz, scientific data, samples, and some personal items. Dobrovolsky looked at the Earth from the space station window for the last time and said, "This blue sphere is so beautiful." And then the hatch was closed, and they were slowly heading towards Earth. Everything was normal in their last conversation with Mission Control. Dobrovolsky said, "We're ready," starting re-entry. After that, the radio went silent, which was completely normal at that time. But no one knew that the voices would now be silent forever, which was completely normal at that time, but no one knew. Now we come to the moment when Soyuz 11 returned to Earth. On June 30th, 1971 at 6:46 in the morning, the spacecraft made a perfect landing 90 kilometers southwest of Karajal, Kazakhstan. Both the drogue and main parachutes deployed at the correct time. The speed of the space capsule slowed down and it landed gently on the ground. Everything looked normal from the outside. The recovery team quickly reached the capsule. As they got off the helicopter, they had wireless radios and were giving every update to Mission Control. There were smiles on the faces of the team. They were ready to welcome their heroes. But as soon as they knocked on the hatch, they didn't get any response. There was a strange silence. The team leader looked at his companions and said, "Maybe they're tired." But there was a strange restlessness in his mind as well. He started the process of opening the hatch. Georgy Dobrovolsky's head was slightly bent forward. Drops of blood were dripping from his eyes. There were blue and black spots on his face. It seemed as if his skin had shriveled due to lack of oxygen. Vladislav Volkov's head was hanging to one side. A thin stream of blood was flowing from his nose, which had dried up after reaching his chin. Viktor Patsayev's condition was different from the others. One of his hands was on the ventilation valve, which was right next to him. His fingers were bent in that direction, as if he was trying to close it until his last breath. Blood was flowing from his ears and his face had turned blue. One of the recovery team members later wrote, "It's hard to put that moment into words." His eyes were open, but there was no life left in them. It seemed like he wanted to say something to us. The doctors immediately tried to check his pulse. Dobrovolsky's body was still slightly warm. Maybe he had died just a few minutes earlier. The team started cardiopulmonary resuscitation. One soldier pressed on Dobrovolsky's chest. Another was trying to shake Volkov. But after 10 minutes, everyone gave up. The entire team had fallen prey to death. What exactly happened to Soyuz 11? The investigation began. Soyuz has 3 sections: the orbital module, the descent module, and the service module. Before re-entry, at 11:35 post-meridian on June 29, these sections separated from each other. And during that time, a ventilation valve was accidentally left open. This valve was 13 millimeters in size, and its purpose was to balance the pressure after landing. But it had opened in space before the scheduled time. Because of this, all the oxygen from the descent module escaped into the vacuum of space, and the pressure inside the space capsule had dropped to 0. The astronauts did not have pressure suits. While designing the Soyuz, the space suits were removed to save space. A human cannot survive for long in a vacuum. A person becomes unconscious within the first 15 seconds. The air left in their lungs started expanding rapidly. Their blood vessels burst. The blood in their brain froze, and due to lack of oxygen, they lost consciousness. The autopsy revealed that blood had clotted in their lungs and their eardrums had burst. Patsayev's body was found near the valve with marks on his hand, which indicated that he was trying to close it. But it takes more than 60 seconds to manually close the valve, and he only had 15 seconds. Another shocking fact came out in the investigation. Mission Control heard a strange noise before re-entry, a loud hissing sound. But at that time, it wasn't taken very seriously. Later, it was found out that it was the sound of a valve opening. Commander Alexei Leonov of the main team said that he had warned during training that the valves should be checked manually. However, the crew depended more on the automatic system. Leonov later tested that it took about 52 seconds to close the valve. It was a small technical mistake, but it took 3 lives. The Soviet government initially tried hard to hide it, but the official statement of the Soviet Union was that the mission was successful. But after the landing, there was a medical emergency, but the truth couldn't stay hidden for long. Impact and lessons of the tragedy. The Soyuz 11 accident shook the Soviet space program to its core. The death of the 3 astronauts was not just a technical failure. It was a national tragedy. Georgy Dobrovolsky's
Vladislav Volkov and Viktor Patsayev were heroes of the Soviet Union. They were given the Soviet
Union's highest honor, the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. For their families, this news was nothing short of a nightmare. When Dobrovolsky's wife, Lidmila, was given this news, she held her children close to her chest and cried for hours. Volkov's son later said, "My father always used to say that he would return after touching the stars, but he never came back." Patsayev's wife, Vera, who was a scientist herself, tried to complete his unfinished experiments. On July 3, 1971, they were given a state funeral in Moscow with full honors. His ashes were placed in the Kremlin wall, and thousands of people were on the streets that day. On that day, the Soviet Union also invited American astronaut Tom Stafford to join in the mourning. It was a rare moment of unity during the Cold War. But along with this mourning, questions were also being raised. Was this sacrifice in vain? Is this the end of the Soviet Union's space program? After the accident, the Soviet government did not conduct any manned missions for 2 years. This was a time for investigation and improvement. The engineers redesigned the Soyuz. The main change was adding pressure suits. Earlier, the suits had been removed to make space for 3 people. Now the crew size was reduced to 2, so that every astronaut could wear a suit. The ventilation valve was improved. It was changed from automatic to manual control, and an extra security lock was also added. In 1973, Soyuz 12 tested this new design. The mission was successful and the astronauts re-entered wearing their suits. This was a lesson. Safety can never be taken lightly. The impact of this tragedy was not limited to the Soviet Union. National Aeronautics and Space Administration also took it seriously. New rules were also added to Apollo 15, which was about to launch just a few weeks later. It was made compulsory for astronauts to wear pressure suits during re-entry. A National Aeronautics and Space Administration engineer said, Soyuz 11 reminded us that even the smallest mistake in space can cost lives. This incident showed the dark side of space travel, which cannot be ignored. But it also made the future safer. After Soyuz 11, the Salyut program was restarted. Salyut 2 and Salyut 3 were greatly improved, and later the Mir space station was launched. Today's International Space Station also stands on this very foundation. Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev gave their lives to make the dream of space stations a reality. In their memory, the Soviet Union gave them many honors. 3 moon craters are named after them: Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev craters. Statues of them were built in Kazakhstan. Their names have been recorded in the history of space forever. But this accident also raised a profound question: is space exploration worth it? Every mission carries risk. The Apollo 1 fire in 1967, the Challenger explosion in 1986, and the Columbia disaster in 2003. This reminds us that reaching space is not easy, but every accident makes us better than before. Soyuz 11 not only brought technical improvements but also changed the training of astronauts. Today, every astronaut is fully prepared for any emergency situation. They are taught everything from practicing breathing in a vacuum to manual control. The story of Soyuz 11 began with that terrifying moment when the valve was accidentally left open, and ended with that terrifying moment when the recovery teams found those 3 astronauts lifeless in that space capsule. But this was a harsh reality of space. But still, this story is not just about sorrow, it's a story of courage, sacrifice, and learning. Where Soyuz 11 failed, it paved a new path for the future. This accident forced the Soviet Union and the whole world to think about the safety of space travel. Pressure suits, improved designs, and strict regulations all resulted from that tragedy. Today, when we look at the International Space Station where astronauts live for months, we should remember that missions like Soyuz 11 have contributed their blood and sweat to its foundation. Every astronaut who reaches for the stars today is indebted to their sacrifices. Their story teaches us that instead of fearing failure, we should learn from it. This journey into space will never end. Even though there are dangers at every step, each danger takes us further ahead. The heroes of Soyuz 11 showed us that path in their memory. We must realize that every success involves significant sacrifices. How did you find this story? Did this tragedy make you think about the pursuit of space exploration? Do let us know your opinion in the comment section below. If you want to hear more stories like this about space, then make sure to subscribe to our channel and enable the bell notification. Do share this video with your friends so that they can also learn about this history.